This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Hey everyone, what's going on? Welcome back to a new YouTube video. Hopefully you guys are all doing well. Happy New Year to all of you guys. 2023, gonna be a pretty exciting year. I wanted to kind of start this year off actually by going back through some of my favorite photos that I took last year in 2022. I think as photographers, it's always a great idea to look back on your work from a previous year, and kind of for me, a year is a great way to kind of bookend obviously the previous 12 months of shooting from the next 12 months. And I wanted to kind of dive in and look at some personal work and some client work and just share that with you guys and share kind of my thoughts on like what I kind of think of everything and how I might want to improve on all this going forward. Now, it's going to be kind of a wide mix of different kinds of photos. Some will be kind of collections, and I just kind of want to talk you through my process behind shooting all of these images. All right, so the first kind of set of images that I shot pretty early on last year, about in January, was for this menswear company based in Australia. They're called Industry, and I shot a lot of these images over the course of like 4 or 5 days. So we shot these photos in studio and also on location in the desert. And the shoot turned out really nice. It was a really fun couple days, and I think I got some pretty great stuff. So starting here with some of the studio stuff, I wanted to kind of convey a sense of emotion with these photos. Kind of the brief from the client was, let's shoot some studio stuff, but let's not make it, super e-commerce sort of vibe. And so that was the goal, was to try to make it feel a little more light, feel a little more upbeat. And I think a lot of the poses do reflect that. I thought this image was pretty cool. I kind of had the talent pull the jacket over his face and just give me a smile. And this is one of my favorite images from the studio day. Also, this is another one of my favorite photos from the whole shoot. This was shooting in downtown LA, and it was actually the last day of the shoot. We were down there shooting, and we had like 20 more minutes left. And as you guys might know, the last couple minutes of the day are usually the best, especially with light here in California. It gets really golden, and I love this image. This is one of my favorites. And why I love it so much, I think, is the combination of all the different talent together. They're all interacting, and I feel like it really kind of just sets the scene. It feels really relaxed. The light's really nice on their face, and I love all this kind of negative space right here. I think it kind of allows for everyone to be able to be in the photo, but it's not too crowded at the same time. I just love the light. The light is usually kind of my main metric for if I like a photo or not. And I love the light in this photo. Everyone's just really happy. You got everyone with a kind of a smiling face. Another cool thing about this photo, I think, is it's not perfect. It's kind of off kilter. The angle isn't perfect. And I think that, it just looks kind of interesting and unique. And I think it really kind of ties the whole set of images together. If you guys want to see the full set of these images, I will link that down below. It's on my website, so if you guys want to check that out. Next here we have another one of my favorite images from the shoot. This was in the desert out near Joshua Tree area, and we rented out this like private lake bed, which was pretty fun to shoot on. We kind of had this cracked ground, which the client really wanted, and I thought these turned out pretty cool as well. It was a really unique location to shoot, especially midday. It was pretty difficult to get really kind of soft light, obviously, but towards the end of the day, especially around sunset, the light got really soft, and it was super beautiful. So this is one of my favorites. It's kind of like the hero shot, I would say, from being out there. Again, I love all the negative space right here. I think when you incorporate negative space like this, it makes the image feel a little more atmospheric, and the subject's just kind of placed in the middle. I'm a big fan of how this looks. I kind of like the draw with, a really simple subject. The frame isn't super crowded, and, there's like a really nice kind of color palette to the actual image with the sun going down. It all kind of works together, and I think it turned out really nice. I also love the light on the subject's face. It was hitting him just right. I remember when we were shooting this, and I was just snapping away as fast as I could. I shot this on the Fuji GFX, and as you can see, the detail in this image is pretty amazing. When I get the chance to, I almost always will choose the GFX over the R5, but for most of the client work that I shoot, I would say the R5 just makes a lot more sense because it's faster and it's a lot easier to use. So bouncing off of the last image, we still have kind of 3 more photos from that specific day in the desert for Industry. The next couple of photos are definitely some of my favorites as well. I kind of picked these 5 images because I feel like overall they represent the shoot pretty well. The desert day was definitely my favorite. So we had 2 days out there, and the second day was a lot cloudier than the first, which actually really kind of lent itself to some really nice pastel sort of tones and colors because it was so soft. It was nice kind of not working with the super harsh light. The clouds actually worked really well in our favor, and it was just overall a lot easier of a day because it wasn't so hot. I love this photo. I think it was very candid in the moment. It was actually pretty cold that day because of the clouds, and I think the talent was actually trying to warm his hands up, so I just kind of snapped this really quick, and then I had him do it a couple more times. I think it's really kind of evokes a little bit of emotion, and it's a cool way to kind of capture the clothing as well. I really am a big fan of these tight crops, as you guys have probably noticed. And I think the GFX is very good for that kind of stuff because you can pull so far in after you shoot. You can crop 300-400% if you need to. This definitely wasn't cropped that much, but as you can see, the detail on here is pretty amazing. And again, this is why I love the GFX so much. This image, I think, was one of the stronger ones of the day, and to me, it feels very natural, but you know, I love the eye contact in this because I think it really kind of locks you in and gets you kind of focused on the image. And I love kind of his hand placement above his head right here, I think, which kind of almost frames the top of the image. And then there's not too much kind of negative space in this photo, which is totally fine. But I think the cool thing is when you kind of pair all these images together, and I'll put a few up on the screen right now, they all look really cohesive, but they have very different compositions, which I think is pretty cool. And this is what happens, I think, when you shoot with a similar color palette. And, you know, for this specific job, we were shooting these pretty neutral colored jackets and sweatshirts. So I think that it all kind of worked together pretty nicely, especially with the cloudy weather. And we got some beautiful stuff. This photo as well, I think, is another favorite of mine, also shot on the GFX. And this one, as you can probably tell, was quite the upward angle. And I think this works really well because the upward angle, I think, just is really unique. And I love how you can see all the cracked ground right here. But it's also when you're shooting someone from this high up of an angle, it's very flattering. So I was on top of a car shooting downward with a pretty tight lens. This was on the 110mm on the Fuji, so roughly an 85mm equivalent. And I just really like the unique angle of this. I think when you're shooting that far down and you have someone looking up at you with this eye contact, it's really cool. I think this one is a pretty unique angle, and I thought it turned out really nice. So moving on to another favorite photo of mine. This was taken early last year in Big Sur. This is a winter sunset, and winter sunsets in California are really pretty. They have this kind of beautiful haze to them, and it's pretty saturated, which I think is obviously really beautiful. This one was one of my favorites. This was taken on the Fuji GA645, which is a medium format point and shoot. You guys have seen me make a few videos with this over the years, and it's a great camera. I do really regret getting rid of it, to be honest, and I'm kind of looking to pick one up at some point, just because it's so tack sharp. You have this beautiful Fuji glass, and as you can see, the scan is beautiful. I got this done at a local lab here in LA, and this is one of my favorite photos of the year for sure. Especially personally, this was a great trip. I just remember it so well. It was a very fun time. And I love the movement in the water here. It's like almost a little blurry, and then you got really the kind of pastel faded sky in the background, and it just all ties together really nicely. One of my favorites for sure. So this is another favorite of mine from that actual same trip. This was just an absolutely beautiful campsite that we were camping at, and I remember the sunset being just one of my favorite moments from last year in general. I think that's probably why these photos really mean so much to me. And this campsite in particular is very hard to get. It's in Big Sur, and there's only 2 spots that you can really kind of get there at the campsite. So it's kind of almost like a lottery system to get it, and somehow, some way, I was able to snag one of these. And you get this absolutely incredible view from the campsite looking at McWay Falls. And this was definitely one of my favorite memories of the year, and thus definitely a favorite photo of mine as well. The framing is great. It was a little harsh in terms of the light, but it definitely softened up towards the end of the day. I didn't take too many photos after this. But yeah, it was a beautiful sunset and a great campsite. This is another favorite photo of mine. This was taken in Mexico at a really beautiful mountain town that I was visiting at, and it was just a really fun trip. It was beautiful. The sun was just shining every single day. And again, you know, the photo itself, it might not mean much to all of you guys, but some of these photos I definitely did pick for personal reasons, and this photo is one of my favorites just for the memories. Moving on to a few more photos of interiors. So this photo, along with the next one, were taken for this really beautiful house in Lake Tahoe that I've shot at several times now. And this was taken in the summer of last year during a really fun road trip, which I'll share a few more photos from later in the video. This image in particular, I think paired with the next one, just work really well together. The house is just really pretty, has a lot of great lines, and the light during the day just shines right through the windows, has this really cool textured glass. And I tried to capture it in a way that I really kind of felt when I first arrived. I tried to keep it really kind of genuine in that way and just shoot it how I saw it. And this was really beautiful. I thought the silhouette of all the plants with kind of the textured glass in the background was a really cool moment. And I think when you pair this with the next photo, which I also really enjoy, is a photo of my buddy's truck in the driveway of the house. This is a really cool photo. Everyone really liked this when I shared it over on Instagram and such. But this photo I think is cool for many reasons. You have the really nice lines of the house right here, which frames everything perfectly. And then you have down here as well, all these lines kind of frame the car. It just works. It works really well. I love all the light up here. I think it's really nice and soft, and all this mixed together with the time of day as well. So this was shot probably like 9 p.m. right after the sun went down, heading into blue hour. And all these things kind of worked really perfectly together, enabling me to get this really cool photo. Now, as I said, this in tandem with the previous photo, I think these two side by side look really cool. And if you want to see the full set from this house, I'll link that down below as well. So next we have a few photos from a road trip that I took last year in June. We went to Point Reyes, San Francisco, and Lake Tahoe all on the same trip, which was a blast. One of my favorite trips of the whole year, for sure. And this photo in particular was a beautiful sunny day in Point Reyes, California. And I shot this on the Mamiya 7 with Portraiture 400. And as you can see, the colors of Kodak is just really shining through right here. I think this really lends itself well. This kind of scene lends itself very well to film. And I love how just minimal this landscape is. I really love shooting minimal scenes like this, especially for landscape stuff. But I think the color is just really fun in this photo. Like it just feels, I don't know, there's like a great combination of colors happening. You have the really soft blues up here. You have this almost kind of turquoise teal color of the water, and the light was hitting it just right in this photo to kind of tie everything together. And then you got the clouds in the background. They're slightly opening up, and this was definitely one of my favorite photos from that trip. We have a couple more here as well from that same trip. This is more, I would say, on the memories side of things, but I have some photos from Lake Tahoe and the Eastern Sierra that I took, and this was just one of the best days of the summer. We were swimming all day, we were out, we were having drinks and just swimming in the water all day. We got sunburnt, had some Chinese food later that night, and this photo, I think, paired with this one as well, really encapsulates that trip. It was just so much fun, and we just were really enjoying the beautiful summer in Lake Tahoe. And you know, all these together just work really well. I think, you know, the color palette stayed the same throughout the whole trip, which is funny because I didn't really think about that until I got the scans back. All these tied together, tells a cool story. All right, moving on to a few more images of some client work. This was shot in the summer of last year as well. This is for an espresso company called Mavam Espresso. So they make these really beautiful espresso machines in Seattle. And I was able to tag along and shoot some cool photos and some landscape imagery for a rebrand for them. And this was all shot in studio. This is some product stuff. And I don't shoot a ton of product stuff in studio, so this was really fun to kind of solidify that style a little bit more and that look and feel. And obviously these machines are really beautiful, so that definitely helps as well. But I think a lot of this stuff paired together, again, works really well. I've been really trying to focus on shooting everything kind of more cohesively, so then when you look at the actual collection of images, everything works pretty well together. And this set of images I was really proud of. I think it really tells a cool story, tells the heritage of Seattle a little bit. And if you want to see any of these photos or these photo sets, I'll link them down below if they're on my website. So yeah, I mean, just the machines are so cool. And I think, you know, to break this image down just a little bit, you have just some great lines of the machines right here. And then you also have they're called portafilters, which are right here. And then all this together, you know, there's just like really nice lines. We shot it on this beautiful kind of wood countertop with like a really nice matte background. My friend Nicole was actually there with me, and she helped me light all of this. So it's all lit from strobes, which looked beautiful. And all this together, I think it just looks great, especially with some of the landscape stuff I shot for them as well. Again, it tells a cohesive story, which was the goal. All right, moving on to a few portraits. This is with my friend Sydney. We shot this in Topanga Canyon, I want to say pretty late last year, like August or September. And I just love the colors in these photos. She was wearing this really cool kind of Japanese vest, and I think it worked really well with the light that we had available, and also just kind of the background and texture. All these together, again, the collection of them worked really well. But even this one, just one off, I think is one of my favorite portraits I took last year. Feels very simple, feels very calm, which is something I also try to convey when taking portraits. I just wanted to kind of feel effortless and very relaxed. And I had her lay down in this field of grass. And the GFX obviously works really well with this because you have all these just great textures to work with. And, you know, the more that you play around with the textures, I think it really kind of helps elevate the image. You have just some great textures of the grass right here, and you can almost feel the texture of her vest, hair, skin tones work really well. And also her arms are kind of framing her very naturally. So that's why I think this portrait is definitely one of my favorites I took last year. Now this single image, as you guys probably saw, I made a video about this road trip. I think it was in August of last year. So I did a lot of driving last summer, and this trip was really fun and also pretty monumental because a lot of the trip was done solo. So this was new for me to kind of solo camp and solo travel for an extended period of time. And this was, I think, on like day 5 or 6 of sleeping by myself. And I was about to meet up with some friends. So the solo part of the trip was over. And not gonna lie, I was pretty exhausted and I was kind of worn down from just not really seeing anybody. And this photo I took as I was setting my car up to camp for the night. I was waiting for my friends to arrive. And I just love the silhouette of the tent right here with the car and the background. It all works really well together, but more importantly, I think it tells the story to myself of that trip and what traveling solo meant to me, and what that trip kind of meant to me as a whole. So just the framing of the car, I think, is really cool. My car is black, and also the tent is pretty dark as well. So I think the silhouette worked really well for this. I wasn't really planning on making it a massive silhouette, but I shot this on the Mamiya 7, and when I got the scan back, it was actually already like this, like pretty dark, which I thought worked really well. So I was pretty pleased with that. The sky's a little blown out up here, but overall, I think the photo is really cool and it tells a cool story. And also attached to it are some wonderful memories from the trip. All right, moving on to some more travels. So this photo was taken in New Zealand. And I went on a trip to New Zealand with 2 of my best friends, both of which had never been there before. So it was really fun to show them around. This photo is just one of my favorite landscape photos from the trip. It's this place called Milford Sound. And as you drive in, you get this kind of prehistoric look to this beautiful valley with a river. It feels very Lord of the Rings-esque. I know a lot of that was filmed down there. It's kind of a cloudy day, but it ended up being one of the most beautiful days I've ever had in New Zealand. And the drive in there is just very ominous, but also beautiful at the same time. And I just love how the colors turn out on this one. Fuji really shines through with the color palette, and this photo is no different. One more favorite photo from that trip to New Zealand. This photo is of my 2 friends, Max and Zach, just laying down in a field. This photo, I think, really kind of encapsulates that trip. We had been driving for several hundred miles that day, and driving in New Zealand is very exhausting. It's not like driving in the States. It's much more similar, I would say, to driving in Europe, where it's just not as straight. There's a lot of crazy mountain roads everywhere, so you really got to pay attention. So a couple hours of driving there is pretty exhausting. I think we had driven like 6 or 7 hours that day, so we were all pretty zonked, and we were heading in to go on a hike, and we pull over into this field because it just looked beautiful. Parked the car, and we all just laid down for a couple hours and just relaxed and had the sun on our face for the first time in a while. And this was a great memory from that trip, and definitely one of my favorite photos, if not my favorite photo from that trip to New Zealand. All right, to wrap this up, we have one more trip that I took in December up to this beautiful part of Northern California. And some of these photos are definitely like my favorites I've ever taken. The Fuji really shines through on these with the color palette. I think I used the Velvia film simulation on these ones. I don't normally use them too often, but I thought it worked well just to kind of bring out a lot of the vividness of the image. And this one's one of my favorites. There's a lot of cool architecture up there. And I love this house, obviously, first of all, but I think all these rocks kind of work well when you're framing that. You have all these really nice natural lines that the rocks provide jetting into the ocean. And I think it all works really well. Obviously the light right here on the rocks is really beautiful and just very natural, which is what I was going for. This is also another one of my favorites from that trip. This was on the 110mm Fuji. I made this one black and white, but it almost looks like it was shot on like Tri-X or like a HP5. I think Fuji cameras are much easier to make your photos look like film rather than any other camera, which is another reason why I enjoy it. The colors just look so natural, even in black and white. This is with, I think, the Acros film simulation, so it looks great. Really love the tight crop, love the framing, love this house, and there's one kind of in the background in the distance back there. And then you also have these really beautiful trees. It all just works really well together. I think if I maybe shot this again, I would have cropped it slightly differently. Like I almost feel like if I cropped this at the top and got rid of the sky, just having the trees, the wall of trees there might make it feel even a little bit more tight and cropped in, which I think would look cool. But other than that, I think this photo turned out really awesome and one of my favorites. And finally, to wrap this up, this was probably the best sunrise of the year. I was staying at this house, which was just absolutely beautiful. And we woke up for sunrise and were able to just see the sunrise from the room, which was phenomenal. We were there for a couple days, and this was definitely the best sunrise we got. And this photo, I think, again, it's a beautiful photo, but the memory of waking up for sunrise is, I think, why it's one of my favorites. Obviously, it's really pretty, and you got the sky in there, you got the light coming in on the side. and it all just works really well together. If you guys want to see the full set from this as well, that's on my website. But this is definitely one of my favorite photos from the year. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit of a breakdown into some of my favorite photos from last year. I definitely have a lot more that I would have liked to share, but I don't want to keep this video too long. This is definitely something I want to do more often, is look at my own work and kind of give an honest look into what I'm shooting and how I shot it and sort of the thought process behind that. I'm definitely going to do one here pretty soon with even some of the stuff that I've shot already in 2023 and just kind of explain my whole process behind how I shoot and like what I've been up to and how it all works together. But with all that being said, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions or if you want to see more kinds of videos like this. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. Take care. Before this video wraps up, I did want to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace, for sponsoring today's episode. If you are looking to create a custom website from scratch without all the coding and hassles that come with it, Squarespace is by far the best choice out there, in my opinion, to make a beautiful website. They have easy to use templates, which make creating a beautiful theme that much easier, 24/7 customer support for all of your questions, and tons of customizable design and layout choices to really make your website stand out. For a photographer like myself, running a small business with multiple different kinds of needs, Squarespace really just makes sense. If you're interested in trying out Squarespace for yourself, go to squarespace.com/Samuel Elkins, which is in the description, to get 10% off your first website or domain purchase. As always, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next week.